And do you think, you have your Twilight Saga, do you think that the readership here, I mean, you have this whole fan base. I really think that this is going to cross over so well. And now you're going to have all of these adult fans that, again, the science fiction genre. Are you excited about that? Are you a little nervous?
Oh yeah, I mean both. I'm excited about the new readers because they get to know me in a whole different way. In some ways, I really feel like the host is my best writing. With Twilight, I was just so raw. I had this story to tell, but I didn't have all the tools. I'm getting better as a writer. I really hope I'm progressing, and so I'm excited to have people introduced to me through the host. And I hope my readers, I think my readers will give it a chance because they're really sweet girls, and they like to do that for me. And I think they'll like it, but I am a little worried. My big nervous point with this is that they're going to start flipping through this and be like, okay, where's Edward? Forget it. There goes the book. So hopefully they'll give me a little space to convince them to love some other new characters.
Well, and I have to say, when I got my copy, I was worried too, because being a fan of the Twilight Saga, but it was so easy to kind of step outside of that and see this story for what it is, and the relationships and the love and hope and survival and just, everything that drives us. So I think underlying within all your books, it's there. So I think it's going to be amazing, and I know that the fans are just going to clamor for it. So
I hope so. It's a really different world. It's not, in my other works, you have this kind of misty, atmospheric place where myths and legends come true, and it's all about the romantic love and kind of sorting out who you are. And this is out in the blaring sun, and it just has this whole different feel, and the characters are facing things that are a lot more serious. I mean, it comes down to it. You're talking about the survival of an entire race, and that is not romantic love is fun.
Yes.
But it's a little bit more serious, and it has such a different feel. I'm hoping that they'll really enjoy looking at a different side.
And I think it's very interesting because you talk about, world peace, and you raise some questions about what price would we pay? I mean, to be able
what
to...
are we capable of?
Yes.
As human beings. Can we exist that way? Because there has to be a lot of agreement. And one of the most wonderful things about human beings is that we don't agree. We all have different opinions. There's so much variety. You kind of have to homogenize us all to get us to agree that way. And maybe that's not the best thing in the world.
And I think it's interesting, too, because Wanderer, when she comes into the human community, she's constantly trying to tell them that, get a sense of, look at what we've done. I mean, yes, we've taken over, but we've eradicated cancer. There's so many things that we can do now as a species, and look at what you guys did, what you guys fought for, and just the violence and everything. So it's very interesting, the questions it kind of raises again, that what price would we pay for that?
Well, now you open up the newspaper, and how often are you just horrified?
Yes.
And you think, wow, someone is capable of doing that to a child, to an old woman on the street, the strong against the helpless. There's so much ugliness in the world.
Yes.
But at the same time, would you just give it up? We have our warts, but it's who we are. And so it was an interesting thing to think about, what you would sacrifice to have the happiness and harmony.
Now, you've mentioned in previous interviews that two of your biggest authors are Orson Scott Card and Jane Austen. So when you blend those two genres, how did that play into writing this story?
Well, it's hard to say, because while those are some of my favorite authors to read, I don't feel that this really goes down one vein or the other. Orson Scott Card is really well known for doing beautiful science fiction, but this isn't as science fiction-y as that. It's sort of a different in between. And of course, Jane Austen didn't deal much with aliens, but hopefully there's still some element of the relationships between men and women, parents and children, that she was able to capture that really realistically, and hopefully, I was able to do the same to an extent.
And so how was, you've written The Host, and you've written, your 3 other novels. How different was that for you? Was it a different writing experience? Did you approach it differently?
I always approach writing to this point. I mean, I haven't been doing this for very long. It's always about the story, and I just sort of let that take over. And so I don't plan or plot, or I did have a pretty detailed outline with this, but then I completely deviated from it, as I usually do. In a way, this was most like writing Twilight, because when I wrote Twilight, I wasn't thinking about who would be reading it.
Right.
Of course, with New Moon and Eclipse, I was well aware that at least an editor with a red pencil in her hand would be reading it, and that was pressure enough. The Host I was writing for myself again. I wasn't sure I would publish it. It was something to keep me busy between editing runs, and so it was just really for me again, and that's my favorite way to write.
And we know so well that music plays a huge part of your writing process. Can you give us a sense of what we were listening to when you wrote The Host?
Wow, see, this was a while ago, so I have to think back. I mean, obviously Muse, because I'm always listening to Muse. I'm pretty sure this was during my Marjorie Fair and Elbow phases, probably a little OK Go thrown in there. And you know, a little bit of everything. I have a playlist for this, like I always do. There'll be the two key songs, I think, would be U2 or Original of the Species. I really like that one. And that's sort of the end of the soundtracks, finishing it off. And then Muse Futurism is sort of the beginning, setting it up. So those two songs would be the key ones.